This three-part series launches the 2025 Blades of Valor Tour at Phoenix PD's Air Support Unit.
We are bigger than I envisioned us being. We are more relevant than I envisioned us being. But I'm very proud of the pilots that we have on both sides, because we don't have good pilots up here. We have the best pilots. We do. And we have the best cops. And we really built something cool. I love the culture, I think, more than I love the equipment.
Welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and partnered with Vertical Valor Magazine. This inaugural three-part series of the Hangar Z Podcast was recorded on location at the Phoenix Police Department's Aviation Unit on Phoenix Deer Valley Airport as part of the 2025 Blades of Valor Road Tour. This year, our journey will take us to 4 agencies across 4 states, showcasing their exceptional work through print, video, and right here on the podcast. Events like this tour wouldn't be possible without incredible support. A special thank you to Airbus and Massif flight suits. Your support made the 2025 Blades of Valor Road Tour a reality. The Phoenix Police Department's Air Support Unit has a unique structure comprising of 2 distinctive details, fixed wing and rotorcraft. We were fortunate to sit down with a representative from each detail to get a comprehensive look at the entire operation. Today's guests are Glenn Ellifritz, Chief Pilot for Fixed Wing Operations, and Scott Hopkins, Instructor Pilot for Rotorcraft. As you might guess from this being a 3-part series, you can expect a deep dive into a wide range of topics, including tactical flight officer selection and training, pilot development, the recent addition of a second Pilatus PC-12, and the challenges of recruitment and retention. You'll also hear about the fascinating career paths of both guests. Stay tuned as we explore the Phoenix Air Support Unit's guiding philosophy of culture over technology. For more about our visit to Phoenix PD Air Support, be sure to check out the Brent Bundy articles in the Vertical Valor Abscon edition, and then watch incredible videos by Lloyd Horgan on the Vertical Magazine YouTube channel. Thank you to our sponsors, Summit Aviation, Dallas Avionics, and Robinson Helicopter Company.
Welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z Podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
We had some pilots that were proficient and qualified in 3 different helicopters, to include our rescue helicopter. And for those that don't know, the Augusta and the Airbus helicopters, the blades spin in different directions. Mm-hmm. So you could have control confusion. You got to really be in the aircraft when you're flying the aircraft. And they're obviously not standardized between the 2 of them. The 109 is an Augusta product, so that was at least you had that, but now it's a twin engine, so you had different things. But then you had to go get in the 172 or the 182.
That's a lot. It's a lot on your plate.
Brent did it with a Bambi bucket. Yeah. Forgot which helicopter he was in, and instead of opening the Bambi bucket, he did an external.
He might have pickled the Bambi bucket.
It was what? How old was that Bambi bucket? An hour old? It was brand new.
That's good material for the ride tomorrow.
I'm pretty sure there may either be a photo or video evidence. I'm not sure.
Ooh.
So it may be floating around out there, but yeah.
He said he immediatally knew.
He knew. When the helicopter gets light, you're like, oh, that's not water light.
No,
that's not turbo.
Yep. All of a sudden, I just gained 150 feet in altitude.
But it is that whole, he made a hand movement thinking he was in one helicopter, and he was in the other.
Yeah. Yep. That just goes, because many units around the country and around the world even have this, where there's a mixed fleet, and that's the negative. Yeah. I mean, I understand why some had mixed fleets. We did for years. But when it comes to muscle memory, System 1 stuff, and and emergencies. When
emergencies, 100%.
You have stress. Man, you can easily do things like that.
Oh,
easily.
Yeah. Right. And you may not even realize you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I experienced that in my flight training. when I went through, I had already started my private pilot in the Cessna on my own on the outside. Ended up finishing it on the inside. And at the time, we didn't do an instrument rating. We went from private pilot through commercial. At the time, you had to have 100 hours of powered flight. So the cheapest way to do that was to build time in our airplanes. The Cessna was obviously, the operating costs were a lot cheaper than flying around in a turbine helicopter at $800 to $1,000 an hour of operating cost. So I went over to the airplane section after my TFO time just to build those flight hours and also to get my instrument, those 3 hours of hood time that you had to have for your commercial. And at that time, they were starting to look at splitting the unit. And I had all my pilot stuff, other than some bootleg stuff with the instructors in the unit and the helicopter. My flight training was all in the Cessna. So I was my muscle memory was all of that. When I started flying in-house, well, they actually gave me a choice. They said, hey, you want to stay on the airplane side or you want to go to the helicopter side? Well, my heart was with the helicopter side. So it was an easy choice for me. So back I came. When they selected me for flight training, it was all done in-house at the time. And I was doing all my flight training in a turbine helicopter, which is also, I fully understand how blessed I was at that, and all the training that I've had. But compared to where most people are in the industry, most people start, especially the ones that have to foot the bill themselves. Your turbine helicopter time is, you don't get it. In fact, everybody's got to get to that magic 1,000-hour number to work their way into the turbine industry. And I got it right away. But I was, you start to realize that rudder pedals in an airplane and anti-torque pedals in a helicopter, they do two different things. The purpose is different. And there was some, pedal confusion is something that happens early on, and you have to overcome that. So that was something that I experienced. Well, I got my commercial in the Koala and went into the patrol rotation, built hours. And when I got up to my, the hour time frame that they start looking at you to see whether or not you're proficient and you're competent in flying the police missions and flying the helicopter, they gave me my PIC check ride. Passed my PIC, I got my wings. And at that point in our unit, so you're not technically a permanent member of the unit until you reach pilot in command status. We have no full-time TFOs. You must progress to PIC. Now, that's not to say that anybody's really ever permanent, but you don't have to progress further when you're in the unit than pilot in command, whether it's in the airplane or whether it's in the helicopter. So almost everybody does, because we have a couple extra steps above that. We have rescue pilot, which is next. So got my PIC, I went out, and I was having fun working third shift where all the action happens. I loved flying around the city at night. Even in the summertime, it wasn't, the sun wasn't beating on you quite as bad. And it was fun. A lot of stuff was going on. I had an opportunity to become a rescue pilot. And our rescue pilot progression has steps within that as well. We do single engine rescue, 2 skid landings. So we'll take guys out. And at that time, we still did long line operations. So you did long line operations. We have several mountain areas that we work in the regional area that we do rescues, that we have helipads on that are, when I say helipads, they're postage stamps. They really are. But we have a pretty active hiking population in Arizona because we have those 340 days of severe clear. Even in the summertime, we get a lot of out-of-towners that go up and hike. And even if you're an ultra marathoner and you're in the best shape of your life, you could still twist an ankle, blow a knee, have a cardiac event or whatever.
Or forget that it's 115 degrees.
So that's where most of it come in. We get a lot of heat injuries in the summertime. And it's unfortunate, a lot of them out-of-towners. And so we trained, I became a 2-skid rescue pilot in the 125s and the 119s. And the next step was hoist pilot. So they transitioned me into the A109, got that transition through, and I could do, well, it's 3 wheels, but it's 2 skid landings on the Mountain LZs. And then you transition into the hoist pilot both day and night. And shortly after I got my hoist qualifications in the unit, we already had MVGs in the unit, but nobody wanted to use them. For a long time, and we want to talk about a culture shift. When I came up here, you didn't wear a helmet. You wore David Clark's in a hat. Guys did not want to wear helmets. In fact, there was only 2 people in the unit who wore helmets. One was Brent. The other was a gentleman, Bruce Bates, who retired out of the unit. He was a real senior guy, over 10,000 hours of flight time in MD products. Got the jacket to prove it. Those were the only guys that wore helmets. Everybody else wore David Clark's. And if you know about MVGs, you're not wearing MVGs unless you have something to mount them to. So they sat in a cabinet. And one of our pilots, one of our instructor pilots, was a former Army pilot. He got his MVG instructor on the civilian side as well, and he built up our MVG program, and he started bringing the MVGs back into our pilot side. And then we ended up, the natural progression was, let's transition it into our rescues, because bad things happen at night too on the trails. So we started doing rescue missions with MVGs, and I actually was fortunate enough to do the first MVG hoist rescue in the city of Phoenix, which was a huge step. Now, that may not seem like a big step to other agencies out there that have been using them for years. Now, this was also years ago, but that have been using them for a long time. But for the culture shift here, it was a big change. And a lot of that is thanks to our former chief pilot, who pushed a lot of progressive stuff that is pretty commonplace in the industry now into our unit.
Could you have made that rescue without MVGs?
Yeah, I think we could have.
But
the safety margin and the risk mitigation. So every time we go do any operation, especially rescue operations, we have to look at it with a risk mitigation mindset. Helicopter aviation is inherently dangerous to a certain degree, and when you go out and you do a mission, your job as the pilot and commander, as the crew members, is to mitigate the risk down. I had a senior pilot once tell me that your answer is always no until you can mitigate the risk down to say yes. And the MVGs added, when you're flying hoist missions up against a mountain and your rotor tips are within feet of a cliff or rock outcropping, in order to get that hoist over the guy who's on a sheer face, you better have that situational awareness. And the MVGs provided that. On top of the fact, it makes it so much easier to find these guys out in the desert. They just hold up their phone with their light. We're like, we always tell them, hey, tell them on the phone, point their phone with just take a picture of the helicopter. And you'll see that light go off. And there they are. The rescue model also came into play when I was first coming up into the unit. When we got the 109, there was a huge guys were worried about it on the fire department side. They weren't used to working with helicopters. They looked at it as a lot of risk, especially some of their senior battalion chiefs and the guys, division chiefs that were out there. And they had to have a culture shift. So when they started realizing that, a mountain rescue that would take hours doing rope evolutions, putting multiple fire crews on a mountain in extreme heat temperatures, you're expanding the risk. On top of the fact, when you've got 5 or 6 fire crews up there at 4 guys apiece, they're not out there responding to stuff out there on the street. When we introduced the helicopter rescue program, all of a sudden what was taking hours in the past and putting a lot of guys at risk, we could get done in 30 to 35 minutes, and patients, transferred to a higher level of care, and the fire crews are back in service and we're back in service. And that culture shift happened. In fact, it's alive and well today. So
good. Wow. There's time's flying here. And there's a couple things that I really want to get to. Glenn, back to you. Tell us about the TFOs on the fixed wing side and the rotorcraft side. They are 2 different things. Right? And the training is different. The missions are different. The equipment is different in many ways. Talk about that and why you don't go back and forth.
So we don't go back and forth anymore on how to test. And, we've looked before just having a separate airplane testing process. And we sat down and we're like, oh, could we do it? And the reason is no, because of the TFO. So we still just pull from the helicopter side. We leave TFO training on how to do the job on the helicopter side. 9 months. If you have to get extended, you might be looking at a year. You might be looking at a year crewing before you get brought over to the airplane side. But by the time you come over to the airplane side as a airplane TFO, you know how to be a TFO. You just don't know how to use the airplane equipment. So the TFO training on the airplane side, it's pretty quick. It's actually about 2 weeks. And basically what we're doing is we're taking you from on the helicopter side, of course there's cameras and stuff on it now, but when Scotty and I came in, you lived outside the aircraft and your whole world was here. I could see city blocks, and then I could look up and I could see when the help was coming, all of that. And then now we're going to shrink you down to a straw, because on the airplanes, that's all you're looking through, and you're seeing half a property or a house and a half. And so really what it is to how to get help to somebody when your view is so limited. Is probably the biggest struggle going from the helicopter side to the airplane side. I would say that one of the biggest drop-offs going from the helicopter to the airplane side, man, on the helicopter side, your intersections and your grid system layout so much better on that side, because you're constantly hearing an address come out. All right, now visually I got to go find it. We're on the helicopter or airplane side, we're lazy. We're just type it in, enter, and the camera's going to slew over.
Right.
They do that now on the helicopters too. But you start to lose a lot of your situational awareness on the airplane side because you can't see as much of the outside world. And so we look at that and we encourage people on the airplane side. I mean, you still got to go jump in the helicopter, because that's the repetition of the big picture going to the small picture, and everything's very fluid. You'll see on the airplane side, we're chill. We'll follow a car around, but as soon as it gets fluid, all right, let's call some fluid people in and have you help out. And your limitations as a TFO on the airplane side, because you're trained, but you're also a helicopter TFO, and you know what they're capable of. What they can see and how quickly they can get assets to you much better than you can on the airplane side. So when we looked at all of that, we're like, no, let's leave it the way we got. We're very good at pulling some very well-trained TFOs over, and it saves us time on the airplane side when I don't have to teach you how to set up a perimeter. You already know what a bailout is looking like. Right. You're just looking at it through a straw. Right. But when a car gets slow and it's circled the same block 4 times, that dude probably lives there and is going to bail out in that area. So the how to be a TFO, they already come over to the airplane side like that. You're just learning different equipment. Right.
It's different equipment and just different style of maybe using the equipment.
It is. And
surveillance too is a unique thing.
Yeah, it is.
It has similarities to calling a pursuit, but it's not like calling a pursuit. It's similar but different. So you cover, obviously go into depth on the surveillance side.
We go into the surveillance side because that's a majority of what we do. And the helicopters, with the technology coming on board with them and being able to see farther, do a very good job of, hey, because the airplanes are call out. We don't have scheduled flights yet. But we have to respond. We have to get up. We have to get through busy airspace, and we have to get there. The helicopters do a very good job of bridging that gap on their scheduled patrol flights. But our TFOs know what's an airplane mission and what's a helicopter mission. And so if the helicopters can bridge the gap, great. But we need to get over and get them off of that call so they can go back to taking priority traffic.
Right.
And hey, this doper is going to drive around for 3 hours. Okay, we got 6 hours of fuel. Let's go do it. Let the helicopter guys go take calls in progress.
Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com.
Man, I wish I had that. I work these surveillances, and you're like, okay, is this guy going to go to another doctor's appointment today.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he gets so bored.
Yeah.
Doper time's a real thing.
It is. Yeah, it is. And so, you know, because everybody is a helicopter TFO first, you understand very well what that helicopter is there for and not there to do. Yeah. So we take our mission, come overhead. All right, helicopter guys, go back in service and get ready for the next chase. Yeah.
While we're talking about TFO training, and we're getting close to wrapping here, the TFO training cadre. When I was reading about that, it's fairly. It's evolved obviously over the years.
Sure.
But now there's a training cadre that's specifically led by yourself. Is that accurate, or you're part of it? Or
so I'm the senior guy on the TFO training cadre, but it's kind of like I try to draw a comparison, kind of be like the Joint Chiefs. You know, there's got to be a guy who's the spokesman, and I'm kind of the director of that.
But everybody on the board has an equal say. And this is really not a new concept for Phoenix Air Support. Actually resurrected something that they used when they developed our current training model. Back in the late 90s, NAFTO, or National Association of Field Training Officers, was putting out a model for FTO for officers that were coming out of the academy. And the Phoenix Police Department transitioned to that. Well, at the same time, the unit had historically about a 65% failure rate in the TFO program. Now, there are a lot of things that lead up to that, but when you establish a list of 10 and you're going through the entire list of 10, that means that you're washing out some of the people because you don't have all those vacancies. So they looked and they said, well, how do we fix that? Well, they redesigned and they figured out, hey, if we take this model that this department's using for FTO training and modify it to air support training, that brings a level of consistency. And it allows for both objective and subjective evaluation, which in police work, you know, HR people think that everything can be a checklist and go down the road. In police work, that doesn't work. The bad guy always gets a vote. Everything's always fluid. You got to be able to adapt, and you got to be able to look at somebody and when you're evaluating them and go, okay, yeah, you might have gotten through this one, but you know, there's some attributes that you're showing that are not going to be compatible with this job. And it's not about checking boxes. So they developed this kind of group that sat down and they said, well, how do we redo this? And they took a group of very senior, been there, done that, had the t-shirt, wrote the book, guys, and said, you know, those guys, they took a group of mid-level guys that had done a bunch of training, but were kind of coming out of the new trainer mode and kind of transitioning to the old trainer mode. And then some new guys. And one of my mentors was one of the new guys, and he was an FTO on the street, and he knew about this program. So they sat down and they had this group that developed our program and what it was going to evolve into. So when I actually took over the TFO training coordinator position several years ago from Brent, when Brent left and went to the airplane side. And I held it for about 3 years. And at that time, I had inherited a pretty good system, but it hadn't been really modernized yet. It was still doing the job. But when I became a CFI, I handed it off. You know, it was time for me to go do other things, so I handed it off to the next person. Well, eventually that position just kind of evaporated.
Kind of disappeared.
It disappeared, and we were still doing TFO training, but now things were getting updated, you know, in a vacuum, and stuff wasn't getting rolled out to the trainers. Things were being put out to the trainers to the trainees that weren't evaluated yet, that weren't really part of our program. Things that needed context or background or experience. And we started to find like, hey, we're starting to see some struggles here in the TFO program. We're seeing some consistency programs in our program. So our boss came back and said, hey, you know, we know you did this in the past. I'm volunteering you.
Congratulations.
So I was like, hey, there's other guys out there, and I got stuff to do. You know, I'm coming to the end of drop. You know, he's like, yeah, great. I heard you.
Yeah.
No,
but guess what?
Congratulations.
Cool.
So I told him, I said, you know, I went back and I talked to my mentor and I said, how did you guys do this in the past? And he tells me about this. I said, I think this can work here. Mm-hmm. So we sat down and we selected 2 really senior trainers, myself and one other guy, 2 mid-level trainers, and one guy who was just getting into the training. All senior officers, all pilot commands, all TFOs, all very talented guys. And we said, okay, our role, we report directly to the lieutenant in that role, but our role is managing, updating, establishing curriculum, and basically providing recommendations to the flight operations side as to who does training, where trainees go, how the progression goes, and we monitor it and oversee it. So we have other TFO trainers that are out there that are not part of the cadre, but we really wanted everybody to have a say. So we wanted the new guys that were closer to the patrol side, that were closer to the new technology side. Like I said, I woke up one day and I'm the old guy in the building. I remember being called the Pepsi generation, and now, I think when kids are born now, they're just given an iPhone and a data plan in the nursery. But I wanted those good influx of ideas, but I also wanted the senior guys to be able to go, hey, look, we've tried that before.
Because of experience. And there's a lot of things like that where you say, well, we tried that 20 years ago before you were even born there, young man. Kind of thing.
But we can see the potential pitfalls because we've seen something similar.
Right.
So if we're going to implement it, how do we implement it in a way that's going to achieve our ultimate goal? And our ultimate goal is to put out, in Phoenix, we like to use the term solo capable, but it's solo capable TFO, meaning somebody who's fully signed off and qualified to do the job. That's the ultimate goal of the training program. So the other point of it was, because we had that level of experience, I have an expiration date on this department. Drop's coming to an end. I'll be off into my next phase of life. Same with the other senior guy. He's actually going to be out of here before me. We wanted to be able to have buy-in and longevity. And we found over the years that when you give people, the stakeholders, a voice in how the unit goes, you get buy-in. You get people who start to care about this. It doesn't just become something that exists in a vacuum or something they've got to do. Now they have a say. Now, as we go out, we'll name our replacements. The board will vote on it, and we'll accept those new guys into it. And hopefully it becomes generational. So 20 years down the road, hopefully this is still going on, but the way it was designed provides that longevity and helps provide the new guys the buy-in. So we want to hand it off, because we had it in the past where we had some really senior, really talented guys that they flew up to their last day and then they're gone.
Yep.
And all that experience walked out of the building.
Poof.
And if you weren't lucky enough to get around them and assimilate some of that, unfortunately, sometimes you just rebuild the wheel, and reinvent the wheel. And we want to help prevent that. Yeah. So, and again, the TFO training is the core of getting, through the progression of the unit. I always say it's hard to get in the building. It's harder to stay here in the building. And it starts with that TFO training program. It's very involved. And I would say, one, I think it's the best job in the unit. I love being a pilot, but God, I love chasing bad guys. But it's also, I think, the most difficult to get through.
Is it too early to say that the different way of looking at the training that has evolved? Is it too early to say that you've seen the numbers change, or have you seen some changes already that you can quantify?
So, I think it's not just in the training program. I think when you look at a TFO program, you can't just look at when they come in the building. You've got to start beforehand. You've got to go out there and recruit. With the number of officers that are out on the street now, it's shrinking. Yeah. Everybody's feeling it. And your draft pool, your selection, your candidate pool is so much smaller now. So you have to go out there, and if you want to have good people show up to your testing process, you better go out and find them. You better go out there and start recruiting them. On top of that, once you recruit them, now you want to mentor them into this, because you want to give them all the tools that they're going to need to make that training more efficient. If you come in here day one and you're just learning your 100 blocks, or you're just like, oh, that's a helicopter, we got a lot of work to do, and the success level is going to be delayed. Now, I've got some really good trainers out there that really care about this, and they really push these guys. to succeed, and our goal is to succeed. We don't want to wash guys out, but we also don't want to set people up for failure.
Yeah.
So we're trying to look at this as a whole process all the way through to TFO completion. And again, because you have to proceed to pilot and command, not only are we looking at you as a TFO, but we're looking at you as, are we going to hand over the keys to an aircraft to you when you're going to go out with somebody exactly in your position that has no aviation experience, and they're trusting that you're going to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons.
So I love hearing with this. So you're keeping the standards high.
Yep.
You're just tweaking things down here before, so that you can keep those standards high. You're changing how you look at things, how you recruit, how you train. You're doing all the stuff down here, so that you can keep that standard high.
Absolutely.
And not say, well, the easy solution is we'll just lower the standard. There'll be a whole bunch of people that can do this job. But we all know that's ridiculous. You're going to get somebody killed.
Right.
And you're going to make a unit go away.
Yeah.
So all it takes is one adverse accident. God knows. I mean, I know there's so many of our brothers and sisters out there that are no longer here because of aviation accidents. I've been to Hooper Heliport. I've seen the wall. Yeah. I know I've talked to guys in Houston. We just had them up here, great group of guys.
Yes.
And the last time I saw them up here was they had just lost some crew members. Yeah. And it's devastating. And in today's time, when air units have larger budgets than some city or municipal departments, everybody wants a piece of that budget. Yeah. And when the bean counters look at you and they look at the line item and they look at what that number is, they go, oh, let's just take that.
Right. Yep.
And
it's the biggest splash, right?
It's the low hanging, as Mike Daly would say, the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
They just see that and say, well, man, we eliminate that. Right. Look at the budget saving. Well, hold on a second. Yeah. What does that do on a 20 every day? Well, and not that some of them care about that, but we all know that these air units are doing incredible things every single day.
Right. And things that you can't quantify on an Excel spreadsheet.
That's right.
And we're having to fight that. And I think a lot of units are probably going to be fighting the drone battle as well, because people are going to go, why not just throw a drone up in the air?
Yeah.
Why not just, just use drones, give every officer a drone.
We sold it as that's one piece, and when we were looking at, because we just redid the whole fleet. And when we sold it to city council, and we're doing FaceTime and Zoom or Zoom meetings with the mayor and the city council, and they're trying to quantify everything. And I would tell this to air units that are looking to bring their programs along, and showing them how we fly to apprehend bad guys in a more standoff manner. Tell your city, your county, or your state, ask them what a wrongful death lawsuit is worth.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you can quantify it.
That's right.
And I know what our big city would pay out-ish, and it's a lot more than what one of these aircraft costs.
Yeah.
And so, that's whenever we get tasked with the quantify what you do. All right, this is everybody I took off. This is the drugs I seized. These are the guys I arrested, this and that. By the way, we don't have guys blowing through lights, hitting families in cars because we decide that we want to chase the wheels off of a stolen vehicle. We don't do that anymore. But we have the assets in place, a tiered approach to chase bad guys and dictate how that ends and how we arrest them on our terms. And he's right. Bad guys have a vote too, but we really, really take a lot of that vote away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yeah. There's a huge change in the way that airborne law enforcement's been done, even in my 18 years of being involved in it. And talking to senior guys that were doing it well before me and other agencies, it's the same job, different patch.
It's very, very different.
Right.
Yeah.
The drone conversation is really interesting to me. It's something that obviously is not going away.
Nope.
And we've talked about this a lot. I honestly think it's a complementary tool to what we're doing. I don't see it as a replacement tool. I mean, it doesn't do a tenth of what we can do with these programs, but it's great. As Clay Lacey talks about, being able to get down low, 6 inches off the ground and looking under cars, looking under overpasses in areas we can't see. Those are the kinds of things that make it a complementary tool. Sitting on a barricaded subject that we don't want to orbit for 3 hours or however long, even an airplane. How long do you want to sit watching a house for a barricaded subject?
Right.
Thanks to our sponsor, Dallas Avionics, who provides innovative products to law enforcement, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, military, air medical, search and rescue, and special missions operations. Dallas Avionics distributes OEM equipment, including communications equipment, digital audio systems, PA systems, flight tracking, and other mission-critical devices. Visit DallasAvionics.com for more details.
We had an incident the other day where a guy who was probably having a mental issue was up on the roof of a school, and he was calling in saying he was going to be an active shooter. And it's at night in a residential area. We had a helicopter overhead. We was watching him with our camera system, and we were up high enough to where we weren't trying to create a noise factor for him or for the guys on the ground. But we also had 2 drones that were up that were working in tandem with us. So some of the things that we couldn't see, they could. Some of the places that they could maneuver and hide. And they even used it as a distraction tool for them at some point. So it is complementary. And I think the officers out there doing it know that. It's the fight with the bean counters who don't know.
That's
the
right.
uninitiated.
That's right.
And it's hard to quantify
well,
that to them.
That's very accurate.
And when you tell them, if they've never been an officer out on the street that's been in a fight by themselves with a bad guy, and the bad guy is got them in a position where they can't get any more information out on the radio, and the only hope of getting somebody to them without luck is that air unit overhead, and they can hear that. It's happened to me when I was on the street.
It's happened to me too.
Yeah.
I had a face full of pepper spray laying on top of a bad guy in a backyard, and I couldn't tell where I was.
Yeah.
The units, the only way they found me was the air unit. I had one of those old blue stylus LED pens.
Yeah.
And I could manage to get that out, and I just waved it around a little bit, and the air unit saw it instantly. Yeah. Next thing I know, I've got 6 of my like-minded individuals on.
That goes back to what we're talking about, having patrol folks who understand what that means.
Yeah.
If you're a civilian, and I understand this isn't common, but if you're a civilian sitting in a TFO seat, what does that mean? But you've been on the ground. You understand. You were on the ground.
Yeah.
That's weird. Why is this guy waving the pin? There's something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can read situations. You can tell just by the way somebody's walking, or by how a car is starting to pull over. You're like,
it's about to get over.
It's going.
Yep.
Yeah. We know it.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. That sixth sense, that cop sense kicks in.
Yeah.
And you can help predict and head off a lot of that stuff.
Body language can be read from 1,000 feet.
Easily.
I mean, you just can.
Yeah.
Every now and then we call for a backup for a couple of officers that have a couple people stopped, and they get upset with us. Why'd you call for a backup for us? Because we knew what was about to happen,
right. Right.
And then it would happen.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just the body language that you could see it. Maybe they're less experienced. The people up here tend to be a little bit more experienced, and you see it, especially now with the camera. That was with eyeballs. Oh, yeah. But with cameras, I mean, you can zoom in and go, wow, I'm seeing the pre-attack indicators here. Yeah,
facial expressions. Yeah.
Well, we could go on for hours. You guys are unbelievable. But we can't. We have, but John, anything to close or questions?
Yeah, there's a ton. There's some things you guys have said that have really struck a chord with me, which I like. The first thing I want to touch on is you said we hire TFOs, not pilots.
Yep.
And I think when agencies start looking at their selections in that way, that's when you start developing a culture, which is the second thing you talked about, that really is beneficial for not just the aviation unit as a whole, but the city as a whole, and the safety of the officers on the ground and the citizens. Because when you bring a bad person into the bunch, it sours the whole patch.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that can happen. Yeah. And I would tell other aviation units out there, especially ones that are starting to stand up their aviation units, really reach out to other aviation law enforcement units
that have been doing it a while.
Very important.
Mission profile, mission parameters within those mission profiles may be different, but there's a lot of experience out there. There's a lot of good ideas out there that can help guide you, so you're not just trying to pull it out of thin air and try and make it work.
Somebody's done it before, and maybe not correctly. I mean, you can learn from successes and failures, but somebody out there has done it before.
So I actually took some of our leadership over to LA. I had gone through the LAPD TFO course over there. great course, by the way. If anybody out there wants to go to that thing, I highly recommend it. They'll treat you like gold.
Yeah.
When they give you the little certificate at the end, you'll realize that your agency hates you. I thought they were giving me the key to the city.
It is it kind of looks like that.
Super cool.
It's super cool, but it's a great networking tool.
Yeah.
You get a lot of great information out there. But I took them over there, and George, anybody who's in airborne law enforcement knows George. And George has a wealth of knowledge, and he sat down with our leadership and started talking about procurement and, buying mapping systems and how to deal with vendors and how to set up your program, with you as the one holding the cards, not the vendors.
Yeah. Which we just turned around and did. I mean, we just purchased a whole new fleet, vendor contracts, all that, and all from stuff that we've learned from other agencies.
So, and we share it. There should be no secrets in our world amongst each other. So we have units reaching out to us all the time. Glenn's constantly working with people. I've got other agencies coming and asking about TFO stuff, and we're happy to help and share that, and we're happy to learn from it. I learn constantly.
Right.
I learn from other agencies, and just because my mission parameters and profile may be different than yours, I can still pull something out of it, and hopefully I can give you something that's going to help your unit. So
outstanding.
You guys, the two of you have built the culture, not just the two of you, but you guys have had a big hand in developing the culture that you've got here. The last question I'm going to ask, and sorry, Jack, we're going to push this into a three episode recording. You've talked a lot about the recruitment and training of new TFOs. The first question is, can you talk about what you guys do as an agency to recruit new TFOs into the program?
So what we do is we actually try and get out there and interact with the patrol guys other than just being a voice on the radio. The department in its manpower crunches in the past about 4 years, they've actually sent the specialty units out to do patrol shifts. So when we were out there, we try and maximize that time with the young officers out there. And they're like, hey, you're in the air unit? And usually that's enough to strike up a conversation. We're like, have you thought about it? What do you want to do on the department? Where do you want to go? And have you ever thought about maybe ending up with us? And there's a pathway to do it. And when I worked out in Maryville and when I worked in South Phoenix and Central Phoenix, a lot of the guys, I'm like, I've been where you're at. This is possible. And there's really cool. Come up and do a ride along. Come up and see what we're about. And what we end up doing, we have one of the guys on the cadre and one of the guys on the airplane detail that really take these guys that come in and they go, okay, we're going to kind of put you into a mentorship pipeline. We're going to put you with units, whether it be flying with the airplane guys, they take up ride-alongs every now and then, but we'll put guys in the back of the helicopter and we start planting that seed, building that fire, and they go, God, maybe I could do this.
Yeah. And then we try to personify who we are. I mean, like we can relate to you because we've been there. And what we really want is for these officers to kind of, put the cop persona away a little bit and let us start seeing what you're like, because we're thinking culture, down the road, and we really want to see. Yeah, we want to see how you work as a cop. The other side of that too is, are we going to like you? And sort of, because that's going to dictate a lot of how we help you.
Yeah. And that there needs to be a good, healthy mix there. They need to come in and have their eyes wide open about what our unit is and what the commitment is. They need to know that. God, I can't count how many times, I'm sure you guys have seen it, where they're like, how hard can it be? You're just looking out the window and talking on the radio.
I said that. I thought, I'm like, that was my exact thought going to aviation.
Yeah, and then
like, I just flying around.
And I love my sports metaphors, but I'm like, when you go from the playing field to the broadcast booth, it's different. Yeah. And you change that perspective. I can take guys that are really great street cops and I put them 800 feet above a scene, and for some reason that change in visual perspective,
it's like
their communication goes out the window. They're unfolded. But what I look for, and we'll every now and then we'll put a guy in the front seat with a trained TFO in the back to be able to take over if needed. And I know they're not going to be successful in what they're doing right away. And I'm looking for that, because what I'm looking for is, how do you react to that?
Yeah.
Are you sitting there going, and you hang your head, or you just kind of go catatonic and you go, it's not for me. Great. It's not for you. I wish you well in your career. It's awesome. You'll go on and do great things, I'm sure. But the guy who's like, I want another one. I want to do better on this. How do I do better? And then I stoke that fire. And I'd rather pull a guy in a training environment. I'd rather go, guy, come on. Just pull him back a little bit than having to be like, come on, man.
Absolutely.
We're looking for that cop that can't sit still, right? You're fidgety. You're fidgety. Okay, like, I'll slow down a little bit.
And the pilot and the TFO and the trainer in the back, you're listening to this and you're looking at each other going, you just know.
When I got up here, I was like, can we land? Because I want to get out and get in on this, right? And they're like, no. So, hold on.
So you guys actually do what you're saying is you spread the word, plant the seed about aviation. You do that through briefings. Is that your primary?
So we used to do that. We actually had some multimedia stuff that we put out a long time ago, and it was a patrol briefing on a VHS cassette tape for the new kids that don't know what that is. I'm sure you can Google it.
It's an antique store somewhere.
So it's before DVDs. But it was kind of this monotone, but it was pictures from the air. Now we have a multimedia unit within the department that does some really amazing stuff. In fact, we'd love to poach your guy for that. Our guys are good. I heard he's pretty good.
Lloyd's
too,
amazing.
So.
He's incredible.
So, but the multimedia experience is a way to take this newer, younger generation that lives in 15-second clips and go, oh, that's pretty cool. And they can see that. Now they want to come up and see what it's like.
Just in the last year, too. I mean, they're doing stories. They did a story on Helen. They did a story on
That's how we found Helen. Yeah. Because I have a good friend who was an Albuquerque pilot, John Skinner. His son, Jake, is on your department. Yeah. And so I follow John. We're friends on social media. And he posted it. Yeah. And I went, oh, my gosh. Yeah. I write to him. I said, hey, ask Jake if he knows her. Yeah. I said, we need to talk to her. Yeah. And then this is before I met Brent. And we just knew from that clip. It was like,
Helen's got such a great personality. Yes. I was her phase 2 trainer, helping her get through the TFO phase, that phase, and she has such a great personality. She's got a backstory that if you don't dig, you don't know, but you realize that some of the challenges that she's overcome, I mean, she thinks in French.
Yes, she does.
And, a lot of people don't understand what the challenge is on that. And then what we do is we communicate, right? We see and we communicate. Yeah. Now she had the extra part. I'm going, okay, I've done the police job. I still think in French. How do I make this sound right to the guys on the ground?
In phase 2, did she ever break out in French under stress or anything?
Oh, no.
You can tell us. We won't tell her.
The great thing is she'll do FaceTimes or phone calls with her mother who still lives in Canada. Yeah. And her sisters who live in Europe. And the Franglish that I'm like, I catch
on it here, and you're like, just watch her.
It's funny.
She could speak Spanish too.
Oh yeah.
So I've known Helen from patrol. I mean, she was on patrol squad with my brother, and she would show up to do a Spanish translation. She would have to hear it in Spanish, translate it in her head to French, and then tell the officer in English.
That is really cool. Yeah. Well, the point of bringing that up to you is just that media group that Phoenix PD has is outstanding.
Yeah, they're doing a great job.
It isn't just Helen. I now follow them. Yeah. And it's top quality. Yeah. Top quality stuff about all sorts of people within your department. It's just that, Helen was just like, oh, that's Hangar Z material. Right. Yep. And we contacted her through Brent, and she agreed. She was reluctant. She's so humble and so nice. And it was like, no, we need to talk to you. And when we did, we went, that was gold. Oh, yeah. I mean, because she's just, and last night, that's the first time we've ever met her. Yeah. We were so excited when we got to watch her land. Yeah. We were videotaping her landing. She waved to us up on the roof and came up. We got pictures together. And it was just exciting for us because we really felt like that was a special interview. Yeah. And now we've done it again with Phoenix PD and for another special interview. But yeah, your media people know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of shorts too about, hey, if you want to fly, here's an avenue.
I saw another one recently with Helen on a short where they took the longer one, made it a short, and then and I just sat there and went, wow, yeah, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and she's in that generation where she's getting ready to move into that TFO trainer role.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool.
We're kind of, now the mentoring with her is kind of taking a different room, and everything in our unit is generational. So nobody comes up all at once. So we have guys that are, that are a year apart or 2 years apart in their experience. So as us old guys start to filter out of the building, we want to continue that, that legacy and that quality of training well beyond our years in the unit.
Well, she's a quality human. We're going to fly with her here. Not too long from now.
About an hour.
That's right. You guys are going up.
We're go up with her.
She's got her own. She's got her own unique language too. So she takes the brunt of the reindeer games, and she gives it back.
She's an easy target in this building.
And she's so well liked, and that's one of the things that really ingratiated her with the people in the unit. Is she's just easy to like.
Yes. Well, we like her a lot, and for lots of reasons. We've gotten to know her personally. I mean, we share photos and stuff, family stuff. She sent us a photo last week from Antelope Canyon with her Hangar Z hat on and said, "Hey, look at this. It's one of the coolest photos I've ever seen." She's in the middle of Antelope Canyon with all those red rocks, and that's the cool thing about what we are doing and what you have created, and I get to tag along and experience this, but we get to meet people like today. Scott and Glenn, we've added you to the list of guests and added you to the list of friends now, because this is really exciting for us. We learn stuff every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
So to close this part of the conversation out, you guys, patrol briefings, multimedia approach to bringing new folks into the unit. Any other unique?
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
Word of mouth. Okay.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
We take our new guys that come in here and we're like, "Hey, you guys just came out of patrol. You guys have the contacts.
Go tell your buddies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Start talking. Start bringing your friends up here. And they're looking at it now from an aspect of that. What does it take to be successful? And they can go, okay, I know some of my friends that this isn't going to be suited for them. But I have an idea. There might be this one guy.
Yep.
And if we can get them early, we also do academy briefings, the same thing that happened to me. So we get those guys and we're like, hey, put that bug in there and go, hey, there's a lot of diverse things to do in this department, a lot of cool stuff.
Because you are competing.
Yeah, we are.
One of them.
If we can get them curious while they're in patrol,
and
then we can, if you think you've got things you want to go do, but this is being the end result, this is where people that come into our building do really well before they come up here. Or we'll plain flat out, and I'm one of them. Hey, go be a hell of a patrol officer, because that is what a vast majority of what you're going to do before you come up here.
Right.
And we try to do listen to the calls we go on, listen to the way that we talk, listen to the questions that we ask, because when we test you, that's how we're going to score you.
Yeah. Very cool.
So it's all about filling the margins on those test those test evaluation forms. So
Last question, I promise.
Don't,
This is a whole new.
no, go ahead.
So you've
got me
gone
all
in
day.
and you've identified, okay, we've got these folks that we've recruited. They're real interested in coming up. I've got a group of 20 folks. How do you guys select them? What do you guys use? What's your selection criteria to pick your next class of TFOs?
So the way it works, we have the department has set up the criteria to be able to test. So there's a minimum time frame that you have to be on the department before you're eligible to test. Doesn't mean you're going to be competitive at that minimum time frame, but they have to apply. They put out the announcement, hey, we're looking for the TFO candidates. We've started to do mid-year orientations again, in addition to the pre-test orientation. Come out, it's your chance to ask questions. Look at the aircraft, see what's going on. Let us get you on some flights. Historically, we were doing the 2 or 3 weeks before the testing process, and it was very testing process oriented, not hey, this is what we're about oriented. But we'll do both of those. Then they have to submit a packet and they do a file review. So that's the first thing. You have to be eligible to transfer. You can't have any discipline that would affect your ability to transfer. And we're looking. That's our first chance to look at you. Then when we invite them, our testing process is tiered. We do 2 phases, and each one of those phases has different requirements. So our first phase, we bring them in, immediately we sit them down, we give them a 100 block test. It's no secret. You better know them. And we'll see what's your level of preparation.
Is it multiple choice or is it writing the
No,
blank?
so you'll get a street name and you'll be like, write the 100 block associated with that street name or vice versa.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, somebody comes in and wants to be in our unit, but they get a 40% on that. Okay.
And they know that's coming.
They know it's coming.
It's not a secret, and it shouldn't be.
No.
And for a long time, we were trying to get guys to do that before they ever came in the building. You may sit a year on that eligibility list before your number's called. What are you doing in that time?
Right.
Start prepping. So once they're done with that, then it can kind of go in a couple different routes, but we'll go out and we'll do a hangar practical where, because we have that fire rescue component, we'll make sure they can lift up the Bambi bucket. Do they know how to get in and out of the helicopter? Do they have the physical ability to move the helicopter using our chopper spotters? And there's little things in there that, you can go through the motions and you can get through it, but those little extra things we're looking for. Yeah. Have you spent the time up here to know? Have you been taught? Have you been mentored? Then we bring them in, and one of the nice things about having the airplane here is they have a really great camera system that we'll go out and we'll record a video scenario. And it's not anything super complicated, but what we're looking at is how do you communicate with what you're seeing? What's your thought process? How do you take your cop skills and translate it to here? And there'll be some evaluators in here, and there'll be usually the sergeant will be sitting in here, and they'll play dispatcher and they'll play backup. And
it's a very controlled environment. You're not in an aircraft. There's no sounds. Yeah. You're not moving.
You're sitting right in this room.
You're watching a video screen. Tell me what you see, and get officers to that.
Yep, and we have some cool. We have some different things that we also do. We can do some map book work because we still, in your first phase, you don't get to use the computer mapping system. Yeah. You got to learn how to navigate, and that's one of our hardest obstacles to overcome in TFO training is navigation and geographical awareness.
It was our number one washout.
Yep.
There's people that could get there and tactically they could talk, they could do the tactics, but they couldn't find the intersection.
Right.
Right. So we always say it's not just about knowing where you are and where you're going, but you got to know when you got there, when you get there. And the goal for us is to be visually overhead working the scene before we're physically overhead working the scene.
It's time for your Heli Life giveaway buzzword. Listen up and remember this word because you'll need it to enter for a chance to win exclusive Heli Life gear. Ready? This episode's buzzword is Overwatch. Visit contest.verticalhelicast.com to enter the buzzword.
But we'll do that. We have some other little smaller tests that we'll do on that. And we'll sit down as a group and we'll grade how each individual did and we'll rank them. And then we'll generally take, depending on how many candidates we'll take a maximum of 10 forward to the next phase. And the next phase has changed a couple times over the year, but generally it involves a flight practical where we'll put you in the helicopter. We'll put you overhead on a scene. We have a dispatcher that works with us. Guys on the ground. It's a controlled environment, but we want to see how you do it in the helicopter. Can you step up your game? Then they come back in and they sit in front of an oral board. And we fire the questions at them. Glenn's one of the guys that sits on there. It's generally speaking, it's the flight sergeants, the two chief pilots, and maybe a peer, probably somebody from the cadre, one of the senior trainers. And they'll fire questions at them. And this is where we're looking at, tell us about yourself, because we don't want to learn it from a resume. We want to learn it from you. Mm-hmm. We give them scenario-based questions, and we look and see how do they respond to that. How do they think their way, and how do they communicate their way through that scenario-based question. And we have other regulatory questions that are unit policy type stuff, and we include the airplane stuff. You wouldn't believe how many officers on the department don't know that we have an airplane unit.
I bet.
So they're an integral part of that. And we always ask the following question. The last question is, do you have anything else to add? And we're looking for an answer on that one.
Yeah. You hear that, everybody? They're looking for an answer.
So that is a question. If you say no, you're going to have a hard time. And I'll tell you what. Yeah. And it's funny because I listen to him sitting on the oral boards a lot. He is very strict on the guys coming in. He's got a real. If you coming in and you're not looking your best and you're not putting your best foot forward,
you get an extra question from me. And then like, well, and do you have anything to add? No. Okay, then I do. You're going to get an extra question, and when I grade the oral board, my coworkers will do a lot of this, and I'm just sitting there staring at the applicant.
Yes.
And I'm just staring at them, because in the aircraft, that's what I'm going to do. And it's, if I'm instructing you or Scotty, if he's training the TFO, he's doing a lot of watching what you're doing. So I'm watching mannerisms. I'm watching how you present yourself. And if it isn't up to snuff, we know what the end result of what we're looking for here. And I think even at the flight instructor level, you would attest to this. You can see very early on how a person is going to progress from not knowing the job to knowing the job.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And, I don't have a very hands-on approach with getting people into the building. I do sit on the oral boards, and that's my snapshot to look at a person and be like, are they going to get there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
we
it's
really
hard,
are.
isn't it?
Yeah,
it's hard to
super
read
hard.
people.
It is. Some people don't test well.
That's right.
They get nervous, and I understand that, but still present well.
Yeah.
Present yourself well.
So we have issues where we have guys that come in. It's really good for us. We had 2 candidates come in that were highly qualified, and it was a fist fight for number 1. But one guy, I swear to God, he has an eidetic memory. And he actually retired out of the unit. Both of them made it up here. The other guy's one of our guys on our training cadre now. But when they asked the scenario-based questions and they asked the experience-based questions, you could tell both of them answered them right. But one was answering from experience and one was answering because he knew it was the right answer. We're taking you both, but who becomes number 1?
Yeah.
So that's something that our oral board really looks at.
Nice.
You can sit there and you can fluff your way through an oral board or try. And I always tell guys when they're prepping for it, I go, there's check boxes of the basic things we're looking for. Check boxes don't get you number 1 on the list. What we write in the margins, all that extra stuff, if you fill the margins, you got a good chance of coming out number 1. And in today's date, you better be aiming for number 1 because you may not make it at number 2.
Yeah.
Because we just may not take you.
Yeah. The point about experience you brought up, you said one speaking from experience. Well, that's what we need.
Yeah.
We don't need the person who philosophically knows about pursuits.
Right.
We need somebody who's actually been a part of pursuits and has managed pursuits to be here and sit in the seat. So you guys have said a lot of stuff that really piques my interest, and I think you guys have built a really cool program. Thanks for entertaining my questions. I've got a million more, but in the interest of time, I realize that I can't ask them all.
Helen she'll leave without us.
She will.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if she doesn't get called up. That flight crew gets called up a lot. So.
Well.
The last thing I'll highlight that I really like that you guys do and what you said was, you said, it's hard to get here, it's harder to stay. And I think what happens sometimes is you get somewhere and then you're like, I made it and I can take my foot off the gas. That's not true. Now that you've made it, that's when you actually start, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I like that's a philosophy that you guys employ, so well done.
And it's a career here. So other than being alive, I've been a cop longer than I've done anything else. When it comes to being a cop, I've been in the air unit longer than I've done anything else. And I inherited a really good program from guys that really built this from the ground up well before my time. But I keep learning. Every day I keep learning. Every day I have to keep my skills sharp. And it doesn't just matter. And I learned stuff from the new guys that come in off the street, new tactics, new things. And I'm like, man, I am kind of the old fuddy, and I try hard. And sometimes it's hard not to get stuck in your ways when you've been around doing it for a while.
Especially as an instructor. You want to stay relevant and you want to stay recent. And you're like, all right, I'm going to need new students are going to get me there.
Yeah. And so, and it's interesting. I talked to my new instructors, my TFO instructors, and I give them a piece of advice, and even new CFIs. I'm one of the senior CFIs in the building now, and some of the newer ones that come in, a lot of them ask about that instructional knowledge, and they ask about how to get it across to their student. And I tell them something that a CFI that I respect immensely told me. He said, Scott, if you want your student to learn your student.
Yeah, I love that.
That sounds good. You went down that road and I was like, I think I said that. Yeah.
He told me that. And it absolutely makes sense because you can't jam individuals that have certain learning styles. You can't just make them fit into a mold.
Yeah.
If your goal is to be successful in the training program, you need to have a level of adaptation. They have to meet the standard. They have to learn the material. They have to be able to do the job. but how you impart that knowledge
You got to reach
is
their
on
level.
the
Yeah,
instructor.
there's different ways to get there.
Yeah, you got to reach their level,
Yeah,
and it's going to be different student
That
by
was
student.
really smart, Glenn.
Yeah. It's going to be written on some walls somewhere.
Yeah.
That was a good, that was a good one.
It's, yeah.
Well, you guys, we talk about leaving things better than we found it, and you guys have done that with your time here in aviation.
Thank you, John.
Your footprint's huge here. I can tell that just through talking to you guys and through our interaction with everybody here. So thank you from me and the Hangar Z podcast for allowing us to come in here and talk with you guys.
It's been
make
great.
us feel at home, and just the hospitality's been great.
Yep.
Thank you, Jack, for letting me ask a couple questions here. This has been great.
No, I'm not surprised that it went down this route, and it took us. It was really cool because your bio stuff that you were sharing with us covered so many of the questions because the way you answered them, I loved that. That was great. That was really wonderful.
Yeah, with no breaks either.
Yeah.
So I'm shocked.
That's right. There's no pee breaks in the Hangar Z.
That's right.
So
It's the desert. We're always dehydrated.
yes.
Yeah, and we're at work, so we can't talk about the drink of the day.
Right.
Well, thank you very much. One of the things that's really cool for me, being a small part of this, what John's created here, is that I, over and over, in talking to people around the country in aviation units, I really get humbled, and I really mean that, where I just listen to the things that you've done and that you're doing, and how you've evolved and how you're constantly striving to get better on either side of the cockpit, on either airframe. And it's humbling.
Yeah.
It had happened at DPS. It happened again today. It's liable to happen some more on this trip. But that makes me feel good that the law enforcement aviation is going to survive very nicely. Because of a lot of things. But the thing that I want to remind everybody of again is that when Glenn said that the culture was more important than the technology, that theme came back in things that you both said over and over and over. And I'm taking that away as my one thing, if I had to pick one thing that really impresses me with Phoenix PD Air Support. Keep doing that, and keep instilling that in that next generation when your drop is done, and someday your drop will be done, where somebody else is going to be just like you guys were. Yeah. And they'll be talking to a different podcast 20 years from now, and the cultural thing will be key.
Right.
So with that, Glenn, thank you. Scott, thank you. Great conversation.
Yeah.
Great conversation. And we'll just wrap it up and tell you that Stop 2 is not over yet. We're still going to go hop in with Helen here and do an in-flight podcast a little bit with a crew. And the 2025 Blades of Valor Tour, brought to you by Airbus, is progressing. And, we look forward to the rest of it. Vegas and San Diego to go. But this was a great stop. So
thank you guys.
And you picked the right time of year to come to Phoenix.
Yeah, we did.
Do not do this in July.
Yeah, that was, believe me, that was discussed at one point where it would be very difficult to do it in the summer. But so thank you, MHM and Vertical Valor. We really appreciate all the support in doing this. It gets information from very experienced people like Scott and like Glenn to share with our viewers and our listeners. So with that, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Hangar Z Podcast.
Lastly, thank you to Massif for providing the flight suits we're wearing.
Yes.
For this next phase of the visit here. So,
you guys look great in them.
Wow, thank you very much. Massif came through for us. We really appreciate it. It enhanced our safety, and that's what we wanted. That was number one.
Yep.
But
thank you, Massif.
Thank you.
We'll catch you later. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com. Thanks to our sponsor, Dallas Avionics, who provides innovative products to law enforcement, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, military, air medical, search and rescue, and special missions operations. Dallas Avionics distributes OEM equipment, including communications equipment, digital audio systems, PA systems, flight tracking, and other mission-critical devices. Visit DallasAvionics.com for more details. Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Hangar Z Podcast. We really enjoyed our time with everyone at Phoenix Air Support. They are a first-class operation with some unique approaches to accomplish the mission. Many thanks to Glenn and Scott for taking the time to join us. Make sure to check out the Vertical Valor ABSCON edition for articles and photos from our visit in Phoenix. You also will not want to miss the incredible video content on Vertical Magazine's YouTube channel. Brent Bundy and Lloyd Horgan are the best in the business, and they work tirelessly to get the perfect shots. Their work is just amazing. Don't miss that. Don't forget, there is much more to come in this tour from Texas DPS, Las Vegas Metro Police Department, and the San Diego Police Department. Thank you again to Airbus and Massif Flight Suits for the support in making the Blades of Valor Road Tour possible. Stay safe, and we'll catch you next time on the Hangar Z Podcast.